What's the difference between hot press and cold press watercolor paper? I'm going to use these Ohuhu watercolor pads to show you. We're going to use a couple different watercolor techniques on them so you can really get a good idea of the difference. I'm starting by giving the cold press paper some wash with water. Now we're going to add some blue for cold watercolor pigment. Cold press paper is great for blending and bleed, so pay attention to how the pigments sink into the paper and each other. Now for comparison, we're going to switch over to our hot press paper and add the same technique, so water and then red pigment. Look at how the watercolor sits differently on this surface. Watery areas pool, whereas on the cold press paper they were absorbed. Now that our backgrounds are complete, we're going to move back to the cold press watercolor paper. We're going to do some jaggedy Zen doodle lines to represent that brrr, sharp, cold feeling. And we're getting started before the middle has completely dried because I want to highlight how fun the bleed looks on the cold press paper. Because of this effect it creates, a lot of people use cold press paper for washy, dreamy, blended landscapes and abstract pieces. While we're here, let's also have a look at the grainy texture of this paper. This grit, unevenness, or tooth as it's called, gives a really lovely texture to paintings created on it. Because watercolor paint is so loose and really has a mind of its own, artists choose to use cold press paper when they want to enhance these qualities. I love using it for Zen doodling because it takes the focus of my piece away from perfection. Random bits and bobs are organically going to develop on the page anyway, so I may as well lean into it, Look at how that bleed in the middle caused this lovely curve, which we're taking all the way to the edge of the paper. If you close your eyes and imagine a classic watercolor painting, what you're envisioning was probably painted on cold press watercolor paper. Let's admire all the fun bits and details that it creates. So beautiful and diverse. Use this paper when you're playing. And for more precision, let's move on to the hot press paper. Starting with a big squiggle in bright red to represent that floopy feeling when you're too hot. Now the surface of this paper is different because it is very smooth. It's great for gliding like this. Artists often use hot press watercolor paper for portraits, detailed realistic paintings like botanical illustrations, and things like that. You should note that the background on this painting was much more dry than on the blue one. I let this one dry more to showcase how crisp a line you can get on the hot press paper. Now let's zoom along this curve back here before moving on to the blank section. Because the surface of this paper is so smooth, the pigment doesn't sink into it as much as it does on the cold press paper. For that reason, the paint pools much differently, and you get a kind of outline on your lines and shapes. It's a very cool and different effect. I'll sit both papers next to each other in a moment. I hope this video was helpful. Save it for when you're next shopping for art supplies. Speaking of, my code for 10% off any products on the Ohuhu website is LIZIPHOENIX. I'll put it in the caption. Follow me for more art tips and Zen doodle inspiration.